A few months ago, I found myself at a military outpost in Afghanistan. I'm an archaeologist, and I've been digging into ancient civilizations for over a decade. When I heard about the tomb beneath the outpost, I had to check it out. I can't stop thinking about what happened. The outpost was eerie. It stood alone in a barren landscape, surrounded by jagged mountains and rusting military vehicles. As I walked through the decaying barracks, I felt heavy. It was as if forgotten stories were trapped in the walls. My team gathered around the entrance, a narrow shaft leading deep underground. The air felt strange, thick, like a bad dream waiting to unfold. We all started down the shaft, our headlamps flickering on the walls. Strange symbols appeared, and we laughed, calling them just graffiti. But a chill crept up my spine. Being underground made it worse. My headlamp flickered again, and I felt pressure in the air. I thought it was just nerves, but it felt like the space was closing in on us. Hours passed as we moved deeper into the tomb. Every so often, I heard distant voices echoing down the hall. "Did you hear that?" Fatima whispered. I nodded, my heart racing. I could almost make out words, but they were in a language I didn't recognize. A knot formed in my stomach. Maybe it was the tomb's acoustics. Still, I felt something wasn't right. Then we lost Omar. He wandered off to check something out, and no matter how loud we called, he didn't come back. Panic washed over us. Fatima wanted to look for him, but I hesitated. "We should turn back," I suggested. I wasn't sure we should go deeper, but curiosity pulled us in. We pressed on, against my better judgment. With each step, everything grew stranger. The symbols changed on the walls, shifting in the dim light. I felt a cold breeze brush past me, almost like a breath on my neck. My skin prickled. I glanced at Fatima, and her eyes were wide with fear. "We need to get out of here," she said. But something kept us rooted to the spot. That suddenly hit me. What if Omar found something he shouldn't have? What if we disturbed something that was meant to stay hidden? A voice in the shadows whispered to us, urging us to explore further. It felt like the dark corners of the tomb were alive. I thought I heard soft sobbing echoing through the halls, mingling with the darkness. Just as I turned to suggest we go back, I saw something flicker in my peripheral vision. My heart almost stopped. I felt the weight of the air crash around me. "We need to get out of here," I said loudly, panic setting in. I turned to call for Omar, expecting him to answer, then everything went silent. Now I can't shake the feeling that something followed us out. I still hear whispers sometimes. They haunt me. I wish we had turned back. The days blurred after that descent. I kept replaying our time in the tomb in my mind. I wanted to move on, but shadows taunted me at every corner. Fatima tried to be strong, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. We both felt it, a darkness lingering in our thoughts. That I returned to the outpost a week later. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to go back. The military personnel eyed me suspiciously as I approached the shaft again. "You're not going back down there, are you?" one soldier, an older man with tired eyes, asked. I hesitated. "I just need to check something," I said, trying to sound casual. He frowned and shook his head, as if I were tempting fate. I almost backed out, but my gut told me there was something I missed. I needed to confront whatever unease was clinging to me. With a deep breath, I mounted my gear and descended into the dark again. This time, the air was oppressively cold. I turned on my headlamp, but it flickered, casting shadows that danced against the walls. The symbols seemed to pulse, almost alive, growing more intricate with every step I took. Fatima hesitated behind me. "This doesn't feel right," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We should really turn back." I nodded but pushed on, drawn by a nagging feeling, a need to find Omar or uncover whatever hidden truths were buried below. We reached a chamber where the walls were covered in drawings that made my stomach flip. They depicted figures that looked surreal, half human and half something else entirely. Some appeared to be watching, their eyes wide in fear or hopelessness. That's when I heard it again, the soft sobbing. It reverberated through the chamber. Fatima's face twisted in alarm, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. We exchanged horrified glances. It's him, isn't it? She breathed. It has to be Omar. I wanted to deny it, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread washing over me. We should look for him, I said, although doubt gnawed at my resolve. As I moved deeper into the chamber, the sobbing grew louder. Then everything changed. The temperature plummeted, and I saw a figure standing at the far side of the room. A silhouette, barely visible, swaying as if caught between worlds. My breath caught. I couldn't see its face, but I felt overwhelmed by despair. Omar? I called out, my voice trembling. No response. Just the sobbing echoing off the walls. I took a step forward, heart pounding. Fatima grabbed my arm, her grip fierce. Wait. Don't. Before she could finish, the lights went out. Darkness enveloped us, cold and suffocating. Panic flared, and I could hear my heart racing in my ears. Fatima, what is happening? I shouted, but my own voice felt swallowed by the emptiness that abyss. I stumbled. My hand brushed against something cold and rough. Maybe a wall. But then I heard it. The sobbing shifted into frantic whispers, rushing towards us. They felt palpable, hungry. We need to get out. I yelled, fear surging through me, and then I felt a hand clutch at my wrist, pulling me back. Run! Fatima screamed, terror etched in her voice. But as I turned, something unyielding blocked my path, and a voice, deep and ancient, echoed, you should never have come here. I was frozen, trapped in that moment. The whispers grew into desperate wails again. This time, they surrounded us, shrieking a warning that threatened to drag us back into the darkness. All I could think was, we should have never gone back. I couldn't see anything in the pitch black. My heart thrummed in my chest, drowning out the soft cries echoing around us. Fatima's grip loosened on my wrist, and I fought against the urge to pull away and bolt. Fear pinched at my throat, and I wanted to scream, but I couldn't make a sound. Fatima? I whispered, my voice shaky. Are you okay? I don't know. She replied desperately. Where are we? Just then, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the chamber but casting eerie shadows that seemed to stretch. The figure was gone. We stood amid the crude drawings, the air thick with apprehension. Where did he go? I asked, scanning the chamber. What the hell was that? Fatima looked pale, her eyes wide. I think it was Omar, she stammered. He needs help. A rush of adrenaline shot through me. We have to find him, then. There could be a way out through here. I took a step forward, hearing the whispers again, but this time they came from the walls, not the air. They seemed to pulse, a cacophony of afraid voices merging into one plea for release. I swallowed hard, a chill racing down my spine. Or we could go back, Fatima suggested, her voice trembling. It dawned on me that her resolve was fading. She felt the weight of the place, just like I did. We were just fine out there, she added, glancing nervously over her shoulder. I shook my head. We can't leave. If there's a chance he's down here, we owe it to him to keep looking. Reluctantly, she nodded, though I could see the apprehension in her eyes. We inched deeper into the chamber, my gut tangled with dread. Each drawing we passed seemed to shift in the light, eyes following us in a grotesque ballet of despair. The sobbing returned, now accompanied by a strange dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. My pulse quickened. I turned, breath hitching as I prepared to call out again. But then, I stopped. In the far corner, something glinted. It looked metallic, protruding from behind a large stone. What is that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I crept closer, Fatima at my heels. As I drew near, I realized it was a chain bolted to the wall, rusted and worn. Beside it lay a small, decorative box, partially covered in dirt. I knelt down, my hands trembling with curiosity. "This could be important," I said, shaking the dirt off. Fatima glanced nervously at the entrance. "I don't like this. What if it's a trap?" "I have to know," I replied, brushing away rust from the box's hinges. Just as I pried the lid open, a rush of cold air swept through the chamber. The whispers escalated, now a piercing chorus of shouts. Something was coming that I had to find out what this box contained, but beneath the chaos surrounding us, a feeling of impending doom set in. Would it be the answer we were searching for? Or would it plunge us deeper into whatever darkness awaited? Then, without warning, the chain rattled violently as if something was fighting against it. I recoiled, pulling Fatima with me. "Run!" I shouted, realizing too late that we should have turned back. As soon as I uttered the word "run," we took off, darting through the chamber, hearts racing, the deafening whispers swirling around us like a storm. I glanced back, half expecting to see whatever had rattled the chain lurching towards us. The shadows danced, but nothing emerged. "Where do we go?" Fatima's voice trembled, panic breaking through. "Just follow me," I shouted, desperately guiding us deeper into the chamber. We needed a way out. Each step felt heavier, the ground seeming to pull at our feet. I could almost taste the fear in the air. The relentless sobbing echoed louder behind us, mingling with the dragging sound that made my skin crawl. I was sure it was gaining on us. "Not much farther," I urged, trying to will us forward. But then everything went dark again. The lights flickered off, plunging us back into the suffocating blackness. My hands shot out instinctively, feeling for Fatima, anchoring myself in the uncertainty. "Fatima?" I called, my voice barely breaking through the silence. "I'm right here," she whispered, fear threading through her voice. The sound of her own breath paired with the murmurs from the walls was unsettling. I could feel her trembling next to me. I pressed forward, trying to remember the way we had come in. My thoughts raced, stomach twisting. We had no idea how deep these tunnels went or what was lurking in the shadows. Then, amidst the panic, I felt something brush against my leg. I froze, my breath catching. "What was that?" I whispered. "I don't know," Fatima replied, her voice barely above a whisper, but I could hear the slightest hint of dread. I reached down, my fingers trembling as I tried to identify it in the dark. Cold metal. I pulled it closer, and my heart skipped a key, old and rusted. What was it doing here? "Did you find something?" Fatima asked, eagerness lacing her tone. "It might be something," I breathed, feeling the weight of the discovery. "Maybe it can help us get out of here." Just then, the lights flickered back on, blaring strong enough to momentarily blind us. I shielded my eyes, and when they adjusted, my heart plummeted. In the center of the room stood a shadowy figure, silhouetted against the fading glow. He was chained and battered, eyes darting wildly. "Omar!" Fatima screamed, rushing toward him. "Wait!" I shouted, fear gnawing at me as a wave of realization hit. It could be a trap. But Fatima was already moving, and before I could catch her, the figure's face twisted into a horrifying grin. The sobbing crescendoed, mingling with laughter as the very walls seemed to pulse with energy, whispering a language I couldn't understand. I grabbed Fatima's arm just as she reached the chains. "Don't! We can't trust him." Suddenly, the ground shook, and dust rained down from the ceiling. A deep rumbling resonated around us, and with it, the chains rattled violently once more. We had to escape, but I had no idea where to go now. Fatima's eyes turned wide with terror, glued to Omar. He was no longer just a victim, something in him had changed, darkened. That's when I saw a flicker of movement in the shadows behind Omar. A figure emerging, eerie and silent, moving towards us. "Run!" I shouted again, but as we turned, the shadows closed in, trapping us in a nightmare we couldn't escape. The air felt electric, thick with dread as I gripped Fatima's wrist, pulling her away from the chaos unfolding before us. I could sense the shadows shifting, hungry for our fear. The whispered nonsense grew louder, as if the walls were warning us of what lay ahead. Omar, Fatima called out one last time, but his figure seemed to warp and twist, the darkness enveloping him like an old, forgotten nightmare. I yanked her hard, dragging her toward a side passage that loomed like a small piece of hope amid the terror that we squeezed through the narrow opening, our shoulders scraping against the damp stone. The sobbing and laughter trailed behind us, just beyond reach, but I knew it wouldn't be long before they followed. My heart hammered as we pressed further into the tunnel. The walls were slick, the air thick with moisture, and the smell of decay filled my lungs. I stumbled but caught myself. "Keep moving," I urged, the terror of being caught pushing me forward. "Where are we going?" she asked, panic lacing her voice again. "I don't know," I admitted, glancing over my shoulder. "But anywhere is better than back there." The passage split ahead, one path veering to the left and another to the right. I hesitated, let fear nudge my intuition. "Right," I said, choosing the path that felt colder. After we took a few steps, the whispers began to rise again, more distinct than before. I could hear phrases that sent chills down my spine, something about betrayal and vengeance. "What is this place?" Fatima whispered, her fear palpable. "A tomb or a prison?" "I don't know." We pushed onward, the tunnel narrowing further until we were nearly shoulder to shoulder. That's when I felt a draft at my back, the chill wrapping around us like a snake. It felt wrong. "Do you feel that?" Fatima asked, her voice trembling. "Yeah," I replied, fear pooling in my stomach. Suddenly, the key in my pocket dug into my leg, a sharp reminder of what I found. "Wait," I said, stopping abruptly. "The key." "What?" "It might fit a lock. We need to look for a door." My mind raced. If this is a tomb, maybe there's a way to get out, or at least something we can use. We moved deeper, eyes scanning every shadow, looking for some sign of a door. The air shifted, and the whispers seemed to weave themselves into a coherent thread, a singular chant that echoed with malice. Then I spotted it, a heavy door, almost camouflaged in the stone wall, iron-bound and ancient. My pulse quickened. "There. Over there." I pointed. Fatima rushed toward it, desperation etched across her face. I followed, the key in my hand feeling both reassuring and ominous. As she reached out to touch the door, the laughter roared behind us, drowning out the whispers. I fumbled with the key, hands shaking. The door loomed, ancient and formidable. Would it lead to freedom or to something worse? "Open it," Fatima urged, glancing back nervously. "I'm trying," I shouted, shoving the key into the lock. The moment I twisted it, a screech echoed, resonating through the dark tunnel. The key turned, but what lay beyond? I braced myself for whatever awaited us, heart pounding wildly. Then it hit me, an overwhelming presence, one that demanded attention and whispered secrets I didn't want to hear. As the door creaked open with a heavy sigh, winds howled, pulling us into whatever fate awaited. "We should have turned back," I murmured, but it was too late. The darkness before us was waiting, hungry and ready. The door groaned, creaking wide enough for us to slip through. As we stepped into the room, a cold gust swept past us, carrying the musty scent of stale air and something else, something metallic. My skin prickled as I took in our surroundings. The chamber was dimly lit, illuminated by faint, flickering torches mounted on the rough stone walls. Shadows danced around us, moving as if they had minds of their own. What could possibly be alive down here? This was meant to be an ancient tomb, not a playground for whatever haunted these halls. Fatima's hand tightened around my arm. "What is this place?" Her voice trembled like the flame of a candle. "I don't know, but it feels wrong," I replied, my eyes scanning for any signs of danger. The whispers had faded but left an unsettling silence in their wake. In the center of the room stood a stone sarcophagus, adorned with faded engravings. The imagery depicted battles, rituals, and faces twisted in agony. "This must be the tomb," I said, stepping closer. "What if it's cursed?" Fatima whispered, her gaze locked on the stone, as if it might spring to life at any moment. That I shook my head, trying to dispel the growing sense of dread. "Curses aren't real. We need to focus. We came down here for a reason." I hesitated, realizing it was a lie. I told myself to hold on to some semblance of courage. As I approached the sarcophagus, the key in my pocket grew heavier, as if it were a warning sign. I pulled it out, feeling the cool metal in my palm. "Maybe this can open it," I suggested, but even as the words left my mouth, a deep unease settled in my chest. Suddenly, from behind us, came a low rumble, a sound like stones shifting. I whipped around, my heart racing. A section of the wall had started to close, blocking our exit. "Fatima!" I shouted, panic surging through me. "We need to move." We rushed back toward the entrance, but the opening was shrinking, the path behind now collapsing like a nightmare. I felt a cold pressure against my back as the wall closed in. "No!" Fatima cried, fear mingling with desperation. I could see the panic in her eyes as a sense of urgency filled the air. But there was nowhere to run to, no escape. That I turned back to the sarcophagus, hoping against hope. What if there is something in there? We might be able to use it. Without allowing time for doubt, I placed the key into the lock embedded on the front of the stone coffin. It fit perfectly, but my hands were still trembling. "Please work," I muttered, twisting the key. A sharp click echoed like thunder. The lid began to shift. Dust and debris fell as it slowly opened, revealing a hollow darkness inside. But before I could see what lay within, a chilling laugh erupted from behind us. It was the laughter from before, echoing in this tomb more distinctly than ever. I whipped around, and in the shadows, I saw figures emerging, their eyes glinting like hungry predators. "Who are they?" Fatima gasped, clinging to my side. I didn't have time to answer. A voice, rich with malice, reverberated through the chamber. "You shouldn't have come here." At that moment, I understood, we had awakened something more than just an ancient tomb. And whatever it was angry. "Run!" I shouted, feeling the pull of darkness around us as the figures advanced. I had no plan, only instinct forcing me to escape from this danger that loomed closer. We darted away from the sarcophagus, my heart thudding in my chest. The air felt thick, but I couldn't waste time thinking about it. Fatima stayed close, her breath quickening as we approached the crumbling wall. "What do we do?" she shouted. "I don't know," was all I could manage. The figures were gaining on us, their whispers growing louder. It felt like we were running in slow motion. The shadows seemed to stretch, reaching for us with claw-like fingers. We turned left at a fork in the chamber. The sudden change in direction set off a cascade of dust. It filled my lungs, making it hard to breathe, but I pressed on. "This way," I urged, even though uncertainty flooded my thoughts. Just as I rounded another corner, I spotted a narrow passage on the right. "Fatima, here!" I yelled and dove into the opening, pulling her in after me. The stone walls closed around us, a contrast to the expansive room we had just fled. The passage felt claustrophobic, but it was a chance. We stumbled deeper into the tunnel. The walls were slick with moisture, and the uneven ground made it hard to maintain our footing. I could hear the figures behind us, their laughter echoing, chasing us like shadows in the night. Then, I froze. My ears caught a sound that made my blood run cold. A low growl, rising from somewhere within the depths of the tunnel. It sent chills down my spine. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Fatima nodded, worry etched across her face. "What is it?" I didn't have an answer, but I had to keep moving. The growling escalated, and I realized it wasn't just one sound, it was multiple. Creatures were down here with us. We need to hurry, I urged, picking up the pace. The passage twisted and turned, and after what felt like an eternity, we came to a large chamber. It was darker here, the only light coming from fissures in the stone ceiling. I scanned the area, hoping for some form of escape. That's when I spotted a crude stone altar in the center, stained with age and something I didn't want to name. Around the edges, symbols similar to those on the sarcophagus decorated the walls. Look, I said, pointing. Maybe we can find something useful here. As we moved closer, an ominous rumble filled the air. The ground shook beneath us. I braced myself against the altar. Fatima's eyes widened in horror. What now? Before I could respond, the shadows began to shift. The figures from before emerged again, but this time they were joined by something larger, moving like a mist but with a distinct form. A monstrous silhouette. My throat tightened, my mind racing for a way out. We couldn't fight this. We have to go back, I said, heading toward the way we came. Just as we turned to flee, a blinding light flared from the altar, illuminating the chamber. The figures halted, hissing as if the light burned them. My heart raced at this unexpected twist. What is this? I shouted, feeling both exhilaration and terror. Then I noticed inscriptions on the altar starting to glow. A rush of power surged through the room. It was something ancient, something powerful. Fatima, touch the altar. Maybe it can protect us. I didn't know if it would work. In that moment, I felt desperate. She hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. What if it's a trap? Better than being caught. I yelled, urgency spurring us forward. Just as the shadowy figures lunged again, Fatima stepped up to the altar, then everything went dark. I gasped, my lungs aching from the stillness. The darkness was blinding, thick like a fog. I felt Fatima's hand slip from mine, and panic surged. Fatima? I called, my voice slicing through the silence. Nothing. Only the echo of my own voice returned, mocking and lonely. That I stumbled forward, trying to find her. My heart raced, and I forced myself to breathe slowly, thinking hard about where I last felt her presence. Fatima! I shouted again, desperation creeping in. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the darkness receded. A dim glow enveloped the chamber. There was Fatima, standing at the altar, her hands outstretched and fingers brushing against the ancient symbols. The air crackled with energy, sparks dancing around her. What happened? I asked, moving closer. She turned to me, her eyes wide with awe and fear. I think it's she started, her voice trembling. It's showing us something. Before I could respond, the glowing symbols pulsed in time with my heartbeat. The shadows were stirred again, forming shapes at the chamber's edges, but they didn't come closer. Fatima tightened her grip on the altar, as if it could protect us from whatever was lurking in the dark. Look! She exclaimed, pointing. An image emerged from the glowing symbols, forming a scene of ancient warriors facing off against shadowy creatures. It looked eerily similar to the figures we had seen before. They were fighting them, I said, squinting at the spectacle unfolding before us, feeling a strange connection to the past. They're trapped like we were. As the vision continued, I caught snippets of the battle, a sword raised, shield smashing against the dark figures. Then another image appeared, a figure in the center, radiating light, defeating the darkness with a wave of their arm. This could be the key, I whispered, suddenly understanding. The monsters surrounding the altar flinched at the glowing symbols, their hisses growing frantic. One of them stepped forward, elongated arms reaching out like they wanted to grab us. Fatima, we need to go. I shouted, turning back toward the passageway behind us. No. She insisted, shaking her head. We have to understand this. It might help us. We don't have time. My pulse quickened, a primal instinct urging me to flee. Just then, the protective light surrounding the altar flickered, and the scene before us twisted into chaos. The ancient warriors fell, shadows enveloping them. That's not good, I said, willing my legs to move. I felt the darkness closing in, but Fatima's determination anchored her to the spot. Wait. What if the figure in the light can help us? She looked at me, hope mingled with fear. I hesitated, my mind racing with images of shadows closing in around us. We don't have time to figure this out. We have to leave. Just then, the blinding light erupted from the altar again. It felt like a force that could both save us and consume us. Fatima, I pleaded. Help me find a way out. But suddenly, the glowing images shifted, locking eyes with me, demanding my attention. The figure's unspoken words were louder than a scream choose. The chamber shook violently. I braced myself, knowing we were out of options. It was now or never. Fatima. I yelled again, but the shadows lunged, hungry and merciless. The choice had to be made, and it had to be made fast. The darkness was rising, and we would be caught if I didn't act quickly. With one last glance at the altar, I made my decision. We're leaving. And that's when the ground caved beneath us. I fell, tumbling into a void that swallowed me whole. My vision blurred, disoriented by the rush of dark air. I hit the ground hard, gasping for breath. Instinct kicked in, and I rolled to my feet, ready to fight off whatever was coming. Fatima. I shouted, scanning the surroundings. I was in a narrow passageway, the walls damp and cold. Flickering shadows danced across jagged stone. The altar was nowhere in sight. Holding my breath, I waited for her response. Here. Her voice floated through the darkness, weak but alive. Relief washed over me. I felt a tug of urge to run to her, but caution held me back. There was something off about this place that I turned in the direction of her voice, heart in my throat. As I moved forward, my foot hit something solid. I glanced down and saw the hilt of a sword half buried in the ground. My fingers traced the cold metal, remnants of the past seeping into my skin. I couldn't shake the feeling that this artifact was linked to the vision we had just seen. Are you okay? I called again, urgency lacing my tone. I'm fine. I think I found a way out. Fatima replied, her voice growing stronger. I hurried toward her, gripping the sword for reassurance. I had no idea what might be around the corner. When I reached her, I saw she was standing beside a heavy wooden door. Its surface was engraved with the same symbols that adorned the altar. She looked at me, eyes wide with excitement and fear. This is it, she said, pointing to a faint light seeping from the edges of the door. I think we can get through. Let us try. I pressed my shoulder against the door, muscles straining with the effort, but it didn't budge. We need to push harder. The moment we leaned into it together, I felt the ground tremble beneath us again. A low growl resonated from the shadows. Instinctual dread coursed through my veins. Something's coming, I said, panic lacing my voice. I could see forms shifting in the murky darkness, creeping closer. Hold on. Fatima shouted, nervously pushing against the door. I joined her, our combined strength finally forcing it open. A blinding light burst forth, spilling into our cramped space like daybreak after an endless night. Go. Now. I shouted, shoving her through the doorway before scanning the darkness behind us. The growls grew louder, monstrous and relentless. We stumbled into the light, and the door slammed shut behind us with a resounding thud that we stood in a new chamber, overwhelming brightness saturating the space. Here, the walls were lined with glowing symbols alive and pulsating. It felt familiar yet utterly alien, like stepping into a living memory. What is this place? Fatima murmured, gazing around. I turned to face her, dread settling in my stomach. I think it's a sanctuary. But if the shadows are behind us, then we're far from safe. Just then, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows of the doorway we had just escaped. A translucent warrior, shimmering with a spectral light. They raised their arm, a sword glimmering in hand. "Leave," it commanded, voice echoing like thunder, but I couldn't move. I could feel the gap between us shrinking, and it was at that moment that I finally understood. "Wait. You're here to help us." I stammered, but then everything went dark again. I gasped as shadows enveloped me, swallowing the brightness whole. For a moment, I was trapped in that all-consuming void, where nothing existed but a heavy silence and the pounding of my heart. Then, like an awakening, color and sound rushed back in a cacophony of whispers enveloping me once more. "Fatima!" I shouted, panic tightening around me. There was no response, only the echo of my voice ricocheting off unseen walls. The sensation of disorientation faded, and I pushed myself up, feeling dampness beneath me. I was alone, but the memory of her voice held me steady that I slowly rose to my feet, breath hitching as I scanned my surroundings. I was in a narrow, dimly lit corridor that stretched endlessly before me, walls pulsed with the same eerie glow. Was I still in that tomb? Where was Fatima? Stumbling forward, I could feel a buzzing energy in the air, but it was different from before. I came to a halt as movement flickered out of the corner of my eye. Turning, I saw the light cast shadows figures that darted down the hall before disappearing into dark crevices. They felt familiar, taunting remnants of the horrors we had witnessed. Cringing against the memories of what lurked in the shadows, I pressed onward. My pulse quickened, my thoughts racing. I had to find Fatima, but I had an unsettling feeling that whatever waited here wanted me to go deeper, to follow those whispers that promised answers but held dark overtones. Suddenly, a deep growl echoed from behind me. My heart threatened to leap from my chest as I spun around, feeling the tension in the air shift. The darkness seemed alive, raking at my mind with distant howls and moans. It clawed at my sanity, and I broke into a run that I bolted down the corridor, my footsteps echoing in frantic rhythm. Every turn seemed to take me deeper into the unknown, spiraling into a twisting maze. I didn't know where I was going, but fear propelled me. "Fatima!" I cried again, desperation flooding my voice that I in the distance, amid the chorus of confusion, I heard her faint yet discernible. Was it a real sound, or a trick of my mind? I steered toward the noise, heart pounding in my ears, and came across another heavy door. Its surface was marked with crisscrossed symbols that whispered of ancient tales. My hands shook against the cool surface. "Please, let this be it," I whispered, shoving it open with all my might. It groaned in protest before yielding, allowing me to step into another chamber flooded with blinding light. "Fatima!" I shouted, squinting through the brilliant glow. And there she was, illuminated at the center among strange statues, figures frozen in time, their faces twisted in what looked like anguish. She stood still, mesmerized by something out of my line of sight that I rushed to her side, gripping her arm. "Are you okay?" The warmth of her presence hit me like a wave, pushing back the chilling despair that clung to my memory. "I don't know," she answered breathlessly, her eyes glimmering with unshed tears. "I heard you call. I could feel something pulling me here." Together we looked toward the source of the light. A massive entity, neither shadow nor substance, loomed before us. For a fleeting moment, a visage of hope emerged, a shimmering warrior entwined with fierce determination, bathed in a glow that seemed to challenge the encroaching darkness. "Leave," it commanded again, voice resonating through the chamber, filled with authority yet mixed with a sadness that sparked questions. I started, but my voice faltered. It felt as if we were caught in a binding web that spun between the past and some unforeseen future. In that heartbeat of hesitation, the dark grew restless behind us, closing in like a predator sensing its prey. "We can't stay here," Fatima urged, her grip tightening around my wrist that I felt torn. But what if the shadows surged forward, propelled by fear, rage, and the desire to claim us? "We must go," Fatima yelled through gritted teeth, urgency crashing over her. With one last defiant look at the glowing figure, I turned and bolted through the door from which we came, pulling Fatima with me. My heart raced as we sprinted back down the corridor, the growls behind us growing louder, harmonizing with whispers that taunted us, "You shouldn't have come here." We fled in terror, but the air was thickening, the walls seeming to shatter as we barreled through. I didn't know where we were headed, but forward was the only direction that felt right. Then suddenly, the ground bucked beneath us. I stumbled, grasping for balance, my heart racing. "Hold on!" I shouted, just as everything began to close in. "Step back!" Fatima shouted. I felt her presence beside me even as the reality of the collapsing chamber became all too real. We found ourselves before another heavy stone door, but I could tell it was different. It pulsed with a heartbeat, something alive. "Unlock it!" Fatima shouted, her voice cutting through the thunderous chaos behind us. "Give me a second." I scoured my memory, hands shaking as I reached for the key in my pocket. But then the whispers turned deafening, drowning out my thoughts. I couldn't remember where the entrance was. Damn it! I cursed under my breath, fumbling. What if it was just a trap? Then pain surged in my chest, a reminder of everything we had gone through. With a resolve that felt untethered, I pressed the key into the lock and twisted it. The moment the door opened, a rush of blinding light poured through that we surged forward, blinded and breathless, as the growling noise erupted behind us like a torrent of chaos. "Run!" Fatima screamed again, her urgency pushing me to bolt. We plummeted through the doorway, tumbling into a world unknown. The light faded as we crossed over, and as the door slammed shut behind us, silence wrapped around me. I gasped for breath, heart racing, limbs heavy with exhaustion. What just happened? "I don't know," Fatima said, her voice hesitant. "But I think we're free." But was it true? I looked around, and though we were no longer in that cursed tomb, a lingering chill remained, a reminder that we might still not be alone, that lingering shadows could still follow. And though we had escaped, uncertainty clung to us like a veil, questions swirling in an unrelenting fog. That I moved closer to Fatima, and for the first time since our descent, I felt a glimmer of hope amidst the uncertainty. But I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever burden awaited us, we were merely wandering to a different chapter, still entwined in the echoes of the past. As we stood on the precipice of whatever lay ahead, I couldn't help wondering if it was really over. Would this escape truly free us from the haunting memories, or were they destined to linger, feeding on our fears? I could only hope we wouldn't have to find out, yet deep down, I sensed the shadows still danced just out of sight. "Let us keep moving," I said quietly, ready to face whatever came next. Maybe the real journey was just beginning.